see everybody. I can't begin to tell you, although you're not sitting across the table from me and I'm not thinking about, oh, what is it? Why am I bored? And it's odd to be on the other side. I was telling somebody that I used to coach junior high school swimming, and I never wore my swimming suit because I couldn't swim hardly at all. And so many people have said, I've never heard you read, I can hardly wait. And it's like, oh, okay. So I guess I had to wear my swimming suit tonight. This piece was taken from a story that I told last year at Portland Urban Tellers. And my challenge was to take a story that I'd only told orally and turn it into a written story. So for a few of you that were at the Urban Tellers performance, my apologies. You've heard this before, except it's about half as long as it was. And maybe you're as forgetful as I am, and it will seem brand new. 14 years ago, I took my first ever trip to Vermont. This was not a vacation. This was a test. I'd been dating Ward for 6 months. I was ready to commit. He was not. Okay, there were a few red flags in our relationship. First, I'd been married 3 times before. But so had Ward. I figured it was something that we had in common. The other red flag was Ward and I came from very different backgrounds. He grew up on Long Island. His father took the train every day to Manhattan. Think Mad Men, only with more drinking and smoking. I grew up in Aloha, Oregon. My dad carried a lunch pail every day, not a briefcase. Ward had spent every June sailing on Manhasset Bay. In August, his family went to Vermont. I spent my Junes picking strawberries. In August, I picked green beans. The differences between us, though, went deeper than our immediate families. They went back generations. Ward's family could trace his ancestry to the Mayflower. Mine to Ellis Island, where my grandparents came from Czechoslovakia. But hey, I was in love. Besides, I'd come a long way from my old country roots. Thanks to dumb luck, I'd stumbled into a career as a pawnbroker. I'd become used to the finer things in life. In other words, I'd become a princess. That summer, Ward was taking me to the place he loved most in the world, his family's cabin on Lake Dunmore in Vermont. They called it Grandma's Camp. I was to meet his whole family. Like I said, this was a test. That August afternoon as we drove to the lake, the closer we got, the faster Ward drove. At a hand-painted sign that read Glory Lane, he turned off the road and turned down what looked like a cow path. By then, I was as nervous as he was excited. I wanted Ward to love me as much as he loved this place. I wanted his whole family to love me. At the edge of a cliff, he stopped the car. I looked down through the pine trees to the small shingled roof, sagging and covered with moss. Ward shoots down the cliff, which I'm praying is a driveway, and he stops in front of this dilapidated old cabin. Although it was midday, inside Grandma's camp, it was dark. In the kitchen, it smelled like pine needles and old books. A string hung from a single light bulb, and Ward pulls it, and it got a tiny bit lighter. Enough light to see we had entered a time warp. Nothing had changed inside this dark camp since his grandfather, Duncan I, built it in 1933. Between the cobwebs on the windowsill were tins of spices. Original tins, original spice mix. Ward pointed to the tap over the sink. "Don't drink that," he said. "It's lake water. We pump all our water from the well." Like this was a good thing. The bathroom had no shower. And the toilet, you're only supposed to flush if you need to. Out on the screen porch, I gazed down to the lake. I couldn't help myself. I started thinking of another man. A man who had been courting me. A man who had asked me to go on vacation with him that summer to a villa in Spain. No, I told myself, I love Ward. I love Ward. That night, in our tiny bedroom, I tested the mattress, and it was pokey, like it was filled with straw. Ward was watching me. "Horsehair," he said. "Original." Again, like this was a good thing. The next morning, we went down to the lake to bathe. Ward, with Dr. Bronner's peppermint soap in hand, runs down this steep path, races across this worn-out old dock, and dives in. He comes up grinning like a 12-year-old, arms spread high and wide. "God," he shouts, "I love this place." Meanwhile, I sat on the edge of the dock, dipped my toe into the water, ice cold, and pulled splinters out of my butt. However, in fairness to Lake Dunmore, whatever the mineral content was in that water, my hair had never turned out better. When we hiked back up to the camp, the first relative had arrived. Ward's cousin, Duncan III, had let himself in and was sitting on the screen porch polishing off what was left of a six-pack of beer. It was now 8:30 in the morning. Later, Duncan IV arrived, along with the rest of Ward's family. Brothers, sisters, wives, husbands, kids, dogs. 13 of us, not counting the dogs, in this tiny camp for a week. But hey, I was ready. My hair looked fabulous. The last one to get there was Ward's favorite brother, Jimmy. When his van barreled over the cliff and skidded to a stop, the door slid open, and out stepped this guy who looked like Santa Claus, except he was bald and wearing plaid Bermuda shorts and a Hawaiian shirt. With this true Santa-like twinkle in his eye, he looked around the group until he spotted the stranger. His arms opened wide and he gave me a huge bear hug. "Retreat's over," he whispered. "Welcome to hell." The next day, I knew I had to get away. I took the rental car and drove the 20 minutes to the A&W. There, I ordered the biggest root beer float they had and sat at the picnic table in the full sun. I sipped my root beer and watched the cars go by on Highway 7. And I thought about that villa, Spain. At the end of the week, for our last dinner, Ward's Uncle Duncan II and his wife, Aunt Grace, joined us. This was New England, so it's Aunt Grace, not Aunt Grace. Uncle Dunk and Aunt Grace were retired college professors who lived in Amherst. Very trim, very trim. Did I say trim? They were trim. They were also very prim and very proper. Aunt Grace was wearing nylon stockings. Uncle Dunk had on a white starched shirt. We all sat on the screen porch eating corn on the cob, everyone sharing stories about the old days at the camp. I was waiting for an opportunity to join in the conversation. At that moment, there was nothing I wanted more than Uncle Dunk and Aunt Grace's approval. Finally, I spotted my opening. Someone mentioned popular culture in the 50s. I spoke up, careful to use correct English. In our house, I said, the biggest cultural event of the week was the Friday night fights. I described how my dad would sit in his green chair, beer in one hand, cigar in the other, three of us kids lined up on the couch. I told him how my dad didn't just watch the fight, he was in the fight. The way he would bob and weave, duck his head, shout at the TV, throwing punches the whole time. When I looked up, Aunt Grace and Uncle Dunk were staring at me. Not with disapproval exactly. They simply had no idea what I was talking about. I panicked. You know, I said, the Friday night fights, and I hummed a few bars from the Gillette theme song. Da, 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 da. Dead silence. The only sound was far off in the distance, across the lake, cricket. In that horrible, awkward moment, it hit me. Ward and I weren't just from different tribes, we were different species. The next afternoon, on my last pilgrimage to the A&W, I bought my root beer float, sat on my bench, stared at the cars, and I wondered, can this relationship work? This dark, dilapidated old camp was a place Ward's family escaped to. It took my family 3 generations of struggle to escape from a place exactly like this. Ward and I saw the world in totally different ways, and that was not going to change. Imagine hearing hoofbeats in the distance. Ward, oh boy, pony rides. Me, quick, bury the potatoes, the Cossacks are coming. The real test that week wasn't for me, it was for Ward. Could he love the person I really was? A shallow capitalist with the dark soul of a Czechoslovakian peasant? Ward and I still go to the lake every summer.
Oh, fine.
But he's proven that he loves me more, or at least as much, as he loves his grandma's camp. 3 years ago, he rented another camp on the other side of the lake, the sunny side, for just the 2 of us. This camp has a shower, a beauty rest mattress, a toilet I can flush anytime I want to. I no longer make daily pilgrimages to the A&W, and only occasionally do I think about that villa in Spain.